Hello, my name is Alison Benson. I'm a member of the Hull and East Yorkshire Collaborative Law Group. We are a group of 15 family lawyers who meet on a regular basis to discuss ways in which we can help families who are separating resolve any of the issues that they face in a way which works best for them. We are committed to providing couples in the midst of separation and divorce with a choice. All members of our group are trained collaborative lawyers and many of us are mediators. I have with me today two other members of our group, Karen Saunders and Nick Walton-Jones. Hello to you both.
Hello.
So we're going to see what it's like being in a courtroom. We're then going to see a couple at a mediation meeting, and then finally the collaborative law process at work. Nick, we start with the courtroom. Could you give me some background to the couple and their circumstances?
Yes, Alison. The couple in our film today are Tara and Ned Heaton. They're going through the process of separating and divorcing. They've got 3 children, Tom, 18, Henry, 16, and Lucy, who's just aged 4. And they have issues to discuss and resolve regarding contact to the children and their father, and also to deal with the financial aspect of their case, particularly the family home called the Old Dairy. Tara very much wants to keep that house on for the foreseeable future, whereas Ned wants to sell it sooner rather than later. So we're now going to have a look and see how that might be resolved at a court hearing.
Mr Hoare, it's your client's application.
Sir, I'll ask Mrs Heaton to commence her evidence in this matter and be sworn in. Mrs Heaton, can you please take the Bible in your right hand and repeat after me, I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Mrs Heaton, you currently live in the family home with Tom, Henry and Lucy. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, we'll hear in due course that Mr Heaton would like the house to be sold. Can you tell the court what your thoughts are about that?
Well, I'm astonished, really, and appalled that Ned thinks it's OK to throw the children out of their own home. I just don't feel, really, that that's fair on them, particularly Lucy.
And what about the boys, Tom and Henry?
Well, the boys, they're in a band, and it is a really important part of their lives. They're fortunate enough, because the house is so big, that they've got their own music room. I'm not going to have that situation, am I, if I have to downsize, because I will have to, live in a smaller property.
Mrs Heaton, can you tell the court where the children currently attend school?
Well, Lucy's not at school at the moment. She's been in the village nursery. She's actually settled in quite well there, and she's made lots of friends.
And the boys?
Well, the boys have got a really big year coming up. Tom's in the middle of his A-levels, which he sits this summer, and then I've got Henry going through his GCSEs. I mean, what Ned's expecting is that in the middle of that year, when their education's so important, they can move homes and probably have to move schools as well. He's just not thinking about the children at all.
If you had to move house, have you given any thought to how you might be able to afford to buy a new property?
I mean, it's not just about buying a house, is it? There's all the things on top. There's the new carpets and curtains and furniture. Then there's all the legal stuff with all the stamp duty. And I've only really just started back out working. My income's still low.
Yes, thank you, Mrs Heaton. Sir, I have no further questions.
Well, that seemed quite straightforward for Tara. What happens next, Nick?
Now it's Ned's lawyer's turn to ask Tara questions, and that's called cross-examination.
Over to you then, Miss Draper.
Thank you, sir. With the greatest of respect, you're being very selfish, Mrs Heaton, aren't you?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, this case has got nothing to do with Lucy, has it?
Of course it has.
But the village school isn't the only school that Lucy could go to. There are many good schools in the area, aren't there?
I've looked at all the schools. This is the only one that's suitable for her.
So where do you propose that Mr Heaton should live, then?
Well, perhaps he should have thought about that before he started screwing around with his secretary.
So this unreasonableness on your part is all about Mr Heaton having an affair, is it? See, I put it to you, Mrs Heaton, your case is based upon your desire for revenge against Mr Heaton. It's not really about the welfare of the children at all, is it?
Look, I didn't say that. You're trying to put words into my mouth. But it is his fault that we're here.
But don't you understand, Mrs. Heaton? The court has got to consider the interests of both parties. The court has got to consider what's fair. I put it to you, you're just thinking of yourself.
Well, he surely wasn't thinking about me, was he? Every time he started shouting at me whenever I tried to speak when we were together.
It seems to me, Mrs. Heaton, you've forgotten about your other children, haven't you? All of your evidence thus far has been about Lucy, hasn't it? That's because it suits your case, doesn't it?
Don't you dare tell me I don't love all of my children.
Mrs. Heaton, can I suggest you adopt a more realistic approach here? You're just not facing the facts, are you?
Look, his parents are going to help him out. They've got plenty of money.
But Mrs. Heaton, don't you accept that if the matrimonial home was sold and the proceeds were divided between yourself and Mr. Heaton, then you would both have more than sufficient money to buy a nice property to live in with the children?
And haven't you thought about where the boys are going to practice? I'm going to get complaints from the neighbours and Lucy won't be able to get to sleep.
Seems to me, Mrs. Heaton, that you've just not considered Mr. Heaton or the boys at all, have you? I mean, why shouldn't Mr. Heaton be in a similar position to yourself? Why shouldn't he have his own property? Is that not fair?
Fair? You dare to talk to me about fairness? What's fair about throwing me out of my home?
See, again, Mrs. Heaton, I put it to you, your evidence clearly shows this is all about you and what you want.
Look, why does everything have to change? Why can't we just stay as we are?
Tara's clearly very upset by the questions which have been put to her.
Unfortunately, she is, but this cross-examination can continue in that vein for at least 2 hours.
So what happens after the cross-examination?
Well, after Tara's been cross-examined, it's now Ned's turn to put his case before the judge. He's concerned about his current accommodation because he doesn't think it's suitable for all 3 children to visit him at the same time, and that's a big problem for him.
Did Ned mention any other concerns?
He did. From a financial point of view, he's worried that his present accommodation doesn't afford him any security or stability. Property prices, because of the current state of the housing market, are fairly low, so he'd like to be able to get a mortgage, which he should be able to do, and buy somewhere for himself and the children to come and visit. But to do that, he's got to get some money from the sale of the old dairy.
We are now going back to the court to see Ned's cross-examination.
Sir, I've no further questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hoare?
It's clear, Mr. Heaton, that your approach to this case is completely self-centred and that you've totally ignored the fact that Mrs. Heaton's wish is merely to look after the best interests of the children. That's correct, isn't it?
Well, how dare you say that? I've always looked after the children's best interests.
So can you tell me then, please, Mr. Heaton, how throwing the children out of their home is looking after their best interests?
That's completely unfair.
And what about the 2 boys, Tom and Henry? If they were thrown out of their home, where would they do their band practice?
Well, I'm sure they'll find somewhere at school. In any event, the neighbours won't mind. You know, they're very good musicians.
So you're prepared to take a big gamble with the children's future happiness, are you, Mr. Heaton? Mrs. Heaton only wishes to remain in the house for 2 years. Can you tell me why that's so unreasonable?
Look, it's all right if you've got plenty of money, but this economic climate's meant that it's difficult for me in the business at the minute. I need to buy a property now whilst it's affordable.
I see. So now we're coming to the truth of it, are we? This is all about what you want, the property that you would like to buy. Do you not accept, Mr. Heaton, that as the economic climate improves, your income is bound to increase? That's correct, isn't it?
What do you know about my business? In fact, the recession's meant we're not very busy at all.
Mr. Heaton, can we return to what is important here? This case isn't about your economic aspirations. It's about what's in the best interest of the children.
There are, of course, other factors, Mr. Hoare, as you're aware.
Indeed, sir. Mr. Heaton, do you not accept that the children's needs are the first and major factor that the court must take into account?
Look, it's obvious. She's told you to persecute me just because of my affair.
What are you talking about?
Mr. Hoare...
This all started because of your affair.
Persuade your client
He wasn't
to stay
thinking about the
seated.
interests of the children then.
These interruptions are not helpful, Mr. Hoare. It would be helpful if you could please persuade your client to stay seated. Do the parties want a few minutes to collect their thoughts?
No.
Or shall we carry on?
Get this over with.
All right then, well, we'll continue.
Mr. Heaton, the property you're living in, it's a very pleasant property, isn't it?
Well, I'm not saying it's not, but it's a rented property. The landlord might well want it back at any point.
But moving isn't going to help you financially, is it? It's going to make you worse off, in fact. The cost of a mortgage will be more than the rent you're paying. That's correct, isn't it?
Well, what's that got to do with anything? You're just not being realistic. I didn't have to live in that cottage in the first place. I could have rented somewhere a lot bigger and a lot more expensive. You know, you're just trying to take advantage of me because I've been reasonable.
But Mr. Heaton, the court has to consider the situation as it is, not some hypothetical scenario that you would like it to look at.
Well, you're just saying what she wants you to say. What about me?
This cross-examination of Ned continues for another 2 hours and becomes increasingly heated. The two lawyers then give their closing arguments and then the judge delivers his judgment.
The case comes before me because the parties have been unable to agree. I'm well aware of the burden that this has placed on both parties, both emotionally and financially. Emotionally in the sense that it's taken well over a year for this case to come to the court, and that must have taken its toll, I think, on both parties, and we've heard some of that, I think, today. Financially also in the sense that the cost schedules of the parties, which were handed to me at the commencement of these proceedings, show that a considerable amount of money has been spent. The central issue that I have to deal with is in relation to the sale of the property. When is that to occur? How are the proceeds to be divided? There is also the issue of the lump sum payment. The overriding objective that I have is to try and achieve fairness. The husband's evidence is that he can buy a house for £270,000. He can get a mortgage, we have heard, for £150,000. His position is that he would like to see the property sold now so that he can take advantage of the property market. He believes that this will serve the interests of the children as well, because it will mean that he has a firm base for the children to come and stay with him. On the other hand, the wife's evidence is that the house should not be sold for at least 2 years. She would say it's her home, and in particular, it's the home of her children. My decision, however, is that 2 years is too long a period of time. This property should be placed on the market for sale after 1 year. And there will be a lump sum order for £75,000 to be paid by the wife to the husband. The wife still retains her significant capital and her significant business interests. It remains for me to say that on completion of the sale, the shares are to be divided such that the wife will receive 62.5% and the husband will receive 37.5%.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Karen, everybody seems very distressed and neither Tara or Ned seem happy with the outcome.
Yes, that can be a common reaction. What you have to remember is that the judge has to balance both parties' needs and he has to come to a decision that is in accordance with the law and that he thinks is fair. But what this particular judge thinks is fair may not be what the couple think is fair, so they often get upset.
So we're now going to see Tara and Ned at a mediation meeting. Nick, could you give us some background to the next scene?
Yes, Tara and Ned are attending their third mediation session. At the first session, they discussed concerns over the children, which were a priority for both of them because they needed to get contact arrangements sorted out.
So what happened at the second session?
At the second session, they agreed to produce some documentation to give evidence about their different financial matters and agreed to discuss whether the family home, the old dairy, should be sold.
You got the session record that I sent out?
Oh, that, yes.
Yes.
That's, sorry, it's in my bag.
Thank you.
Do I need it for today, Sheridan?
Well, it just gives us an overview of where we were, and obviously it sets out the agenda for today, which was to talk about the house and what should happen in relation to the house. Because obviously it's the biggest asset, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah, and it wants selling.
Simple as that. Wants selling.
It is as simple as that.
No, it isn't as simple as that, Ned. I told you, I'm not selling. I don't want to sell. I've actually worked out all the figures. I can actually afford to stay there. He keeps banging on about the fact that I can't, but I can. I can do it.
You can't. It's just unrealistic. That house is far too big. You don't need it. You don't need 6-bedroom property. I don't see why it can't just be sold. I'm busy renting. I could take advantage of the market at the minute and get somewhere bought.
Get somewhere bought for you and your new girlfriend, undoubtedly.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Yes, here we go again, Ned.
Yeah, here we do go.
He doesn't understand what I'm going through, Sheridan. I can't even believe that we're sat here. I don't even know how we ended up in this place, because I've gone through my marriage thinking that we were happy. And I discover that he's had an affair. It's destroyed our marriage. I've lost my husband. The children have lost a father, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Ned, why did you have to go and ruin everything? I thought we were happy, weren't we?
Tara, no, we weren't. We weren't happy. It wasn't good for us, it wasn't good for the kids. Look, I'm sorry if I've hurt you. I really am. I'm sorry if I've hurt the children. But we just couldn't carry on like that.
You couldn't carry on like that.
No, we couldn't. Yeah.
Is that the first time you've actually talked together about the breakup of the marriage?
It is, really.
It can be hard, can't it? Everything. For both of you.
And the children.
Are you sure you want to continue today? Do you want to continue to talk about the house, or should we talk about something else?
I'm okay now, actually. Thanks. Now that, as I said, it's a big thing for you to hear you say sorry, Ned, for what's happened.
So you'd envisaged selling the house immediately, Ned?
Well, I'm not saying let's sell it tomorrow, because you know the market is slow. There's not a lot going on with it, but I am thinking it needs an immediate sale. You know, I'd say 6 months, something like that. It can be sold.
6 months. 6 months from now, Ned, the boys are in the middle of their exams. So I've got Tom just sitting his A-levels and Henry doing his GCSEs, and you think it's great to put the house on the market right in the middle of all that. Someone say, it's me, 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 me.
Well, look, I need a time frame for my future.
Well, at least you have a future. What have I got? I've lost absolutely everything.
So 6 months is not okay for you, Tara, and obviously from what you're saying about the children and the boys doing their exams, it might be quite hard for them. What time frame had you got in mind?
Well, my solicitor's told me that I don't have to be out before 4 years.
4 years?
Well, 5 years in actual fact. I mean, we discussed 4 or 5. The reality is that I've got Tom going to university in September after his A-levels, and then I've got Henry doing a degree. Now, if Henry does a 2-year course, because he might not go to uni, he might go on to a different college, because he does music. And so if he does a 2-year course, then he finishes in that 4-year period. If he does 3 years, it's 5. So really, I think we ought to have a plan that sells the house in that time frame, so that I've got both boys through their further education.
What are your thoughts on that then, Ned?
Well, I could tell you what my solicitor's thoughts are. They said they'll get a court order straight away to have the house sold immediately.
That's a lie. Either you're lying about what your solicitor said, or your solicitor needs to go back to law school and do a bit more studying. It's just rubbish. How can they be so far apart?
Well, actually, what you've both demonstrated there is that there's a range of outcomes that could happen if you went to court. Your solicitors are perhaps looking at it from a best case scenario for each of you. So perhaps, you know, the range of outcomes, we might have 5 years at one end and immediate sale at the other end. But if you go to court, then the judge would decide what should happen. Whereas within this process, you two can decide what you think should happen and what you think will work for you and your family.
Well, you're a lawyer as well. Why can't you say what a judge would do in this case? You know all the facts.
Well, I can't actually give you any legal advice within the mediation process. I can give you legal information, which we talked about last time, about the different claims you both could make. But I can't advise either of you. You two have to decide what you think is fair. I mean, my view of fairness will be different to yours, just as a judge's view of fairness might be different.
Well, I'm actually concerned about fairness for the children. You know, Ned, you've got to understand that.
Well, so am I.
So, well, can't you think of a time frame then that kind of fits around their education, particularly with the boys?
Well, aren't we saying then it's a 2-year period, realistically, aren't we? I mean, I don't want to go to court and let a judge decide.
Oh, no, neither do I. That's why I wanted mediation.
So, a 2-year time frame from now, or actually from
2014,
yeah.
Right.
when Henry finishes his A-levels and goes off to uni. Well, if that works for you, I could live with that, because it gives me a bit more time to adjust with coping with all the change.
Well, I can work with that, Tara, that's fine, but just bear in mind, I'm still renting a property, so if we're doing that, then out of that pot of savings that we've got there, I'm going to need about 135 so I can get myself a house now.
Do you know, I just knew you were going to come up with that figure. 135. You might ask why he's come up with that figure. I'll tell you now. He knew that that's the exact amount that I need for my Romanian property. He's done all the figures because we did them before we separated.
So you'd envisage needing 135,000 of those savings to develop your business?
And he knew that.
Right.
I mean, you don't even need that amount to buy a property, Ned, because you can get a mortgage. My solicitor's told me that you should have some kind of ability to get a mortgage. And also, your parents can help you out.
What, again?
Yes, again. I know they've helped us out in the past, Ned.
They've given enough, haven't they? How on earth am I going to ask them to lend me some more money? Because they'll only lend me it when you're sat there in that massive house and all the money's tied up there. It's just unrealistic.
It's not unrealistic at all. I know full well your parents will lend you that money, as you do. I can't see how we're going to sort this out. I've put a reasonably good option down there, Ned, of your parents, and all you've done is just shut it down. You're not even prepared to entertain it.
Well, it's not an option, though, is it? And the other thing, I tell you what, we've got another option for you. Why don't we remortgage the family home? Then I can buy somewhere, and you've still got the house there, haven't you?
Did I hear you right? You just want to remortgage my house? No, my house. You want to remortgage my house so you can buy a place to shack up with your tart of a secretary. That's your brilliant idea, is it, Ned? Oh, my God. I'm sorry, Sheridan, but this is just an absolute joke. I've had enough. He hasn't listened to a word I've said all morning. I'm not sitting here and listening to any more of this rubbish. I'm sorry.
Well,
she might not have gone. She might. I mean, she's upset, obviously, because you've just mentioned that you should remortgage the family home.
well, it is an option.
It is. It is an option. OK. I'll go and see how she is and perhaps sort out some drinks for us. Are you going to be OK in here?
Yeah, I'm fine, Sheridan, thanks.
All right.
Cheers.
I'll come back and I'll let you know if she's gone or whether she's actually going to come back. All right?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, hi, Dad, all right? Yeah, I'm great, yeah. Well, so far she's managed to storm out. Big shock there. Listen, I've got something just quick to ask you. I know it's really cheeky, to be honest. We've got to a position where it looks like Tara and the kids are going to stay in the house for a couple of years whilst they finish their exams and things, and then we can get it sold. problem is that, you know, I'm renting at the minute, aren't I? I could really do with taking advantage of this property market and getting somewhere bought. Yeah, you could probably guess what's coming. I know you've given me some cash before, but is there any chance of any more money? Don't know the answer to that. Don't know how much we're talking about, because it'll depend on what comes out of the savings. I just really need an indication whether or not I can. Yeah, no, that's magic. All right, great. I will give you a ring back. Sorry, Sheridan.
That's all right. Okay. Tara's quite happy to come back in now. All right. Okay, just get on.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Obviously that touched a nerve, didn't it? Talking about remortgaging the family home.
It's a stupid idea. Can't believe you mentioned it.
Right, anyway, moving on then. In the break, Tara, I've spoken to my dad. Yeah, I've asked him on the principles whether or not he can lend me any more money.
Oh, right.
And it's going to be a lend based on, you know, the house is where you're going to stay for a couple of years. Yeah.
And was he okay with that?
Yeah, in principle he says he can. We haven't talked figures because it's probably going to depend on what happens elsewhere, but, you know, at least I've got that assurance. So, just looking at that, you know, if you want to buy this Romanian property, I think I could take 100 out of those savings. That'll leave you with a 77. Enough there to buy a Romanian property. You'd probably have some left over then for your business as well, wouldn't you?
No, I wouldn't, Ned. You've done the figures. Look, I don't want to appear ungrateful. I am truly relieved that you've spoken to your mum and dad, and please tell them you know, I am grateful to them for that. But I've done the figures with you, Ned. You actually sat down and worked them out with me when we were together. I can't manage on 77. You know, what about if you had 75? But don't shake your head, because don't forget, you can borrow on a mortgage.
Yeah, I know I can.
So you might borrow a bit more now, but when that house gets sold, when our home gets sold, surely you can pay off whatever you've had to borrow by way of a mortgage with your share of the house. So it's only going to be a temporary thing.
We certainly have to talk about, at some point, how the proceeds of sale of the house will be divided.
So it's only going to be 2 years when you're having to pay a bit more on a mortgage, and you can just get it all paid up. So 75 really, Ned, should be more than enough for you as a deposit.
Well, it's not. It's unrealistic.
So your gap's now about sort of 25,000 between the two of you. If you're saying 75 and you're saying you need 100.
There's also, don't forget, your capital gains tax.
I've got capital gains tax to pay.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
No, the capital gains tax has come about because I sold those flats last year. So, and it was while we were together, Ned. Might be my business, but it was whilst we were together. So it's my lawyer says that that's not my debt, that's a joint debt.
Okay. I asked you at the last meeting to go and investigate what the CGT might be. Did either of you do that?
Well, I did. I went to see Elaine Gwinnett.
Right.
Actually, I was a bit surprised because she gave me a figure that was quite low. It was about 3,200 and something. I don't know why it was that low, but it was.
So how had you imagined that would be paid then?
Well, I kind of thought it would be joint, but I suppose having said that, it is a lot lower than I thought. So, I mean, if I was to pay it, would you be prepared to accept less than that 100 grand that you're asking for? I mean, I think the maximum I could push to would be 80, for Ned to have 80, and then that would then leave me with about 97.
What are your thoughts on that then, Ned?
Well, it's still not enough, is it? I mean, I've moved enough as it is.
No, you've moved because you went in too high. If you go in too high, you're going to get knocked down. I went in at a reasonable figure.
So your gap's now 20,000 then, if you're saying 80, Tara, and you're saying still sticking with your 100.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't move, so, and I've got things to do, so either we sort this out or what happens thereafter?
What could be more important?
Well, if you go to court, you're obviously going to spend a lot of money, aren't you? Have either of you talked to your solicitors about how much it might cost to have an argument about this?
You mean if we don't agree today?
Yes. Well, not if you don't agree today, but if you don't reach an agreement overall.
Then we have to go to court?
Yes.
Well, my solicitor said that it would cost about 15,000 plus VAT.
All right. And what did your solicitor say?
Well, exactly the same. Well, we're not going to argue about 20,000 and spend 30 doing it, are we?
No,
really?
Well, I know I don't want to, but, you know, I can't carry on a business without some capital.
I mean, the other thing to think about, you know, you still have to divide the proceeds of sale of the house. You know, it's another aspect to think about.
Yeah, so as I said, you can, when you get that money, you will pay off your mortgage.
Yeah, all right.
Is that you saying?
No.
Yeah.
Look, listen. If I agree £80,000 that I will have, I'm leaving you with the remainder.
Yeah.
Then I could really have an assurance from you that I could have that grandfather clock that's been in my family for a few generations.
Oh, Ned, of course. I wouldn't have kept it anyway. Of course you can have it. It was your parents. In fact, I think it was your grandfather's before that. That's absolutely fine with me.
Okay, well,
I can't believe you'd have thought I'd have argued about that anyway.
Well.
So, Ned, are you saying you'll now accept the 80?
Yeah, I don't want to go to court. I don't want to spend that extra money when we can just share it.
So, 80,000 from the savings is going to you.
Yeah.
And the balance is going to you, Tara, and you're paying the CGT.
Yeah.
And the grandfather clock's going to you, Ned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Well, thanks, Sheridan.
Okay. Do you want me to write that up on the board, or do you want me to just put it in the session record?
Yeah, if you could just send me something like this.
Yeah, it's useful, Sheridan.
Yeah, because I can
Right.
sit down and read it.
Okay.
That seemed a lot less stressful than being in the courtroom, but I did notice that Tara and Ned were on their own. How would they go about getting legal advice?
Well, at the end of the last mediation session, the mediator will have given both of them a copy of a Memorandum of Understanding, or Memorandum of Agreement as it's sometimes called, which sets out the bullet points of what the parties have agreed to do. They each take that to their own solicitor to run through it with their own solicitor, and if they're still happy with everything that's been agreed and the solicitors advise them it's a reasonable settlement, the solicitors will draw up the paperwork to send into the court for the judge's approval, and once the judge has given approval to the arrangement, it's made into a legally binding document.
So we're now going to see Tara and Ned going through the collaborative process. So what would the couple expect from the process?
Yes, collaborative law is a new process in which each party instructs a lawyer that's trained in collaborative law. And the difference is that the negotiations are done at meetings rather than in correspondence as there would have been traditionally. But the difference is that at the beginning of the process, the couple and the lawyers sign a participation agreement which commits them to working together as a team rather than opposing each other. So hopefully then the lawyers are present then at the meeting and help them to negotiate an agreement that they think is fair.
So we're now going to see Tara and Ned going through the collaborative process.
We want this process to be a very comfortable one for you both. If either of you need a break at any time, then you only have to ask. If you need to take a separate legal advice from either of us, then please say so, and a separate room can be made available for that purpose. So just a couple of little, reminders before we actually start the meeting. I think Sally now is just going to give us the outline of the meeting, etc.
Yes, fine. Well, Simon and I have spoken, and we've each chatted with you. And so far as I understand it, the items that you'd like to discuss today are what's going to happen to the family home, and what sort of accommodation you're going to need for yourselves and the children, if that's right. So Ned, starting off, what are your thoughts on housing needs?
Well, the family home has to be sold. It's too big for Tara. The boys are coming to stay with me. Lucy started staying as well, as you know. So, quite rightly, the house should be sold as soon as possible. I'm not currently renting. I want to get somewhere bought, so I've got somewhere big enough for me and the kids.
Okay. So that's it from your perspective. Now, Tara, how about you? What are your thoughts on accommodation and what everybody needs?
Well, I don't want to move. It's as simple as that. I mean, I never asked for any of this to happen to me and the children. I really don't see why I should have to move out just because you went and destroyed our family.
Look, I knew this would happen. I can't see the point of this meeting if you're just going to sit there and bang on about what happened in the marriage. We've got 2 lawyers here that we're paying for to help us out with the finances. They don't want to hear about what happened in our marriage, and to be quite frank, neither do I. You know, can't we just get on and concentrate on selling this house?
No, we can't. I have told you over my dead body am I moving out of that house. I don't care what you want, Ned. I mean, isn't it enough that you've destroyed our marriage, that you now just want to take away the only thing I've got left, which is my home?
Do I really have to sit here and put up with that?
I mean, you acknowledge that you're both very hurt and angry. It's a very difficult time, very important issues for you both. But it's totally normal to feel like that. But what you're both saying is that you need somewhere where you can spend time with the children and somewhere to live, which has got enough room for everybody.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you both agree that the needs of the children are the top priority in this matter. Am I right? Am I understanding that right?
Of course they are.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, they are.
So Tara, what do you think the children need when they're with Ned?
Well, I mean, when I've got them, they have their own bedrooms. But Henry and Tom, there's only 2 years between them. So while they're with you, why can't they share? You only need a 3-bedroomed property.
So, let me get this right. You want to stay in a 6-bedroom property where they all have their own rooms, yet when they come to me, you expect the boys to share?
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
Not ridiculous.
Of course it is.
Well, you've suggested the boys sharing. How would they actually feel about that, Tara? How would the boys feel, do you think?
Oh, they wouldn't like it.
They wouldn't?
No. But then I go back to what I said before. None of this is my fault, is it? I mean, Ned, you'll just have to explain to them that the reason why they're sharing is because you went and had an affair and broke up our family. You'll have to explain it to them.
Tara, the boys are spending a lot of time at Ned's, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that includes staying overnight?
Yeah.
Am I right? And also, am I right in thinking they're studying for their exams at the moment?
Yeah, I know it's a bad year for them.
So it's a tough time for them.
It is. Tom's got his A-levels in summer and Henry's got his GCSEs, hasn't he?
Yeah. Okay. And they're doing a lot of that studying whilst at your house, Ned. Probably not as much as you'd like, but...
Well, they're doing some, yeah.
So, sort of in the terms of bedrooms, Tara, what would you think would be best for them?
With the studying
thing? In relation to the studying aspect, particularly, yeah.
Well, I can see that ideally they'd need a bedroom of their own.
Okay.
So in fact you're both saying that you need a house each with enough bedrooms for yourself and enough bedrooms for each of the children to have one on their own.
Okay. Yeah, but Tara, how am I supposed to afford a 4-bedroomed house if you won't sell the family home?
Well, why can't your mum and dad lend you some money?
Tara, if we sell the house, there's £460,000 worth of equity, right? We could both buy, virtually mortgage-free, and both free home. Our parents have done enough, you know, they've lent us enough money already. I can't understand why you've got this insistence on staying in a massive house you don't need and you can't afford to run anyway.
You don't ever understand the position I'm in. You just don't get it, Ned. I just feel like everything's collapsing. The only thing I've got left is the home. And now you want to take that away.
Okay,
unbelievable.
Just wondering whether it's
Is it appropriate for a break, do we think? Tara?
I'm okay, I want to carry on.
Ned?
No, I'm all right, I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, it is a very difficult time for everybody. I think it's very easy to get wrapped up in the emotional side of things. And marriage breakdown is one of the most stressful life experiences, and that, you know, usually comes at the time of talking about moving houses, people moving home, children moving from one place to another. So it is very difficult. And it sounds as if, Tara, when everything else is changing, perhaps the one constant for you is the house.
Yeah, that's absolutely it, Sally Ann. It's...
Yeah, am I right in thinking it's more of a timing issue for you, Tara, as to when the property should be sold? You know, it's not a case of if, it's more when. Am I being realistic?
I mean, I did say to you when we spoke, I'm not expecting to be able to stay there forever. Having said that, when we spoke, you said to me that I wouldn't have to be out before 5 years. So why am I expected to go now?
When we spoke, Tara, what I said was the court would, in all likelihood, order a sale because we have a property here with substantial equity in it. And when that property's sold, then, you know, it could actually realise enough money to buy 2 properties, one for you and one for Ned, where the children could spend time with each of you. So, you know, in those circumstances, the court would order a sale, ultimately. But the issue for the court would be when, really, because the court would look to give you some time to readjust. The court would be particularly concerned about the children, give Lucy some time to settle down with her schooling, and particularly the boys to do their exams, etc., etc. So really, as I say, the court would expect the property to be sold, but, you know, they would allow you some time, and the children some time to readjust, as I've explained.
Right.
Is
Okay.
that
No,
clear
yeah, I've
now?
got that.
So it's a timing. It's a timing issue.
I've got it.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think
Sally-Ann?
that's right. I mean, there's a possibility that the court might order a sale, or equally that there might be a delay, and they would look at all the surrounding circumstances. So what we need to concentrate on, we need to focus on reaching an agreement that will satisfy everybody's needs as far as possible.
Well, you know, I can see the basis that the court might look at what the children need, but what we're talking about, a 2 or 3 year period then?
That sounds about reasonable.
Well, how do you feel about that? I mean, I could work with 2 years.
Well, 2 years is fine, Tara, but, you know, if I've got to wait 2 years, how on earth am I supposed to afford somewhere to live now?
I've said, why don't you borrow money off your mum and dad?
Look, I've told you 1,000 times before, they've lent us enough money. How on earth can I go back to them and ask them for some more money? Especially when you're sat in this massive house and we're waiting for it to sell.
It's okay.
How on earth can I approach them again?
So, Ned, you've borrowed from your parents before.
Yeah.
And am I right in thinking it's not a question of them not being able to lend you money, but really of you not wanting to approach them?
Well, I suppose, you know, they have money, yeah, and they have lent us it before.
So it might be a possibility.
Well, it might be, but how on earth do I ask them?
What sort of relationship do they have with the children?
Well, a fantastic relationship with the children.
Do they?
Yeah, well, it's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, no, they do. They do have a really good relationship.
So they'll be aware of the timing and that the boys are working for exams over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So do you think they might be sympathetic to that and perhaps the need to delay a sale for a period of time?
Yeah, they would be sympathetic for something being in place for the children's stability. Yeah, I'm sure they would. I think I could approach them on that basis. But, you know, Tara, I'm sat here doing all the compromising. I'm going to need most of these savings that's left so I can go out and buy somewhere to live.
It's not all about you compromising, Ned. Why do you have to play the victim all the time? If there's any victim in this thing, it's me.
Ned's raised the issue of the savings, so if we now look at the schedule of assets, Sally-Ann, I think I've given you a copy. Tara's got yours. There's one for Ned there. Okay.
On the next page.
All right, okay.
If you look at page 2,
Yeah.
the total savings are 177,000.
Yep.
Perhaps, Ned, you could tell us how much of that you think you would need.
Yeah.
to-
Well, I need
to start on.
100,000. I need 100,000 out of that. Tara, well, that leaves you with your 77 still for your Romanian property and a bit extra for your business.
Well, no, it doesn't. And in any event, it's not fair. I mean, to be honest, I'm a bit confused because when you spoke to me, Simon, I kind of figured that I was getting more than 50% of the assets because Ned's earning so much more than me. So if he's wanting 100 and I end up with 77, that's not right.
Yeah. We're talking about timing here, Tara, as far as the home is concerned. Ned is agreeing to delay the sale of the property. That's what we seem to be saying. We're talking about a 2-year period here before the home is sold. So in the interim period, Ned would need more from the savings to set himself up again to buy a property, etc. Okay, but after the 2-year period, when the home was sold, then you would get more than 50% because of the difference in the earning capacity between yourself and Ned.
Well, is that right, Sally-Ann, that Tara's going to end up with more than 50% of the overall assets at the end of this?
Well, that is possible. I mean, the reason is that Tara earns considerably less than you do, and isn't able to earn very much more. And so the options will be either, if you want to split all the assets equally, then you would, even when the house is sold, you would probably need to pay Tara spousal maintenance for her as well as maintenance for the children. Okay. Alternatively, if you simply intended to pay maintenance for the children, you would need to give her some more of the capital to offset the difference in your incomes. So that's the way the difference comes in.
Okay. At this point, can we talk about capital gains tax?
Because the capital gains tax figure is a lot lower than I thought it was going to be. I mean, if I was prepared to pay that, Ned, would you kind of move on that 100,000? I mean, in my head, I kind of had a figure of you having about 80 of those savings. Well, don't put a face. I mean, I need you to have about 80 because I need the rest of it for the capital for the business.
Well, it's just not enough. Look, I appreciate you standing the capital gains tax, but what about if I took 85?
Simon, do you think that's fair?
Well, we've discussed before, Tara, that this isn't a perfect science. Looking at that figure, I would say it's within a band of reasonable orders that a court could make. So the best word I can use to describe that is it's a feasible, it's a feasible offer. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, on that basis, then I'll go with that.
Okay.
That's right with you.
Right. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Good.
Oh, well, perhaps it would be sensible to recap then and see where we've got to with everything.
Yeah. If you can do that, Sally, that'd be very helpful.
So, what I understand is that you've agreed that the house is going to be sold, but not for 2 years.
Yeah.
By which time the boys will have completed their GCSEs and A-levels.
If they study hard now.
Always a problem.
And Lucy will be settled in school by then. Tara, you're going to be responsible for the capital gains tax bill with regard to the sale of those properties. That's January 2013. Ned, you're needing to buy a house, so you're going to have £85,000 from the savings.
Yep.
We've established that I think you can borrow 150,000.
Yep.
And so maybe with that, and if your parents are able to
hopefully,
to lend you a little bit more, you should be able to set yourself up, certainly in the short term, on that basis. Tara, you'll have the remaining £92,000 from the savings, which will enable you to buy the Romanian property and have some capital to put into your business.
Some working capital.
Yeah. So I think that's just about everything.
Yeah,
made probably as far as we can get today. Actually,
substantial progress.
Yeah, made very good progress. Definitely.
Really good.
Yeah, no, it's difficult, but I think you've done very well.
As far as next time's concerned, Sally Ann, we probably need an agenda between us about issues we need to talk about.
Yes, well, we'll need to speak to each of you, and then Simon and I'll get together and work out, again, an agenda for next time, which is probably going to be the issue of spousal maintenance and whether that's payable or not.
Sure.
And also what we do about the sale of the division of the assets, the equity after the sale of the house.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, okay.
That's good, yeah.
I noticed that despite there being a few tense moments in the meeting, the lawyers were able to diffuse this and refocus Tara and Ned so that they could concentrate on the main issues. They were also able to give legal advice straight away so that they could make progress quite quickly. So Nick, what happens after an agreement is reached in the collaborative process?
It's more or less the same as after the conclusion of the mediation process. The lawyers will draw up a document which will be sent to the judge for approval, setting out what's been agreed between the parties, and once the judge has approved that, it will be a legally binding document. But because the lawyers are going to be present at the last four-way meeting, they can often draw up the final agreement there and then, which speeds up the process.
Nick, is there any difference in cost of the different processes?
It's very important for clients to be fully aware of the cost situation when they start their cases, and all members of our group are experienced to give clients realistic cost estimates for their cases. The most expensive process can be the court process, because once the court timetable has started, you've got to comply with that timetable with filing of documents, and costs can be quite horrendous.
We hope you've enjoyed our film and found the content useful. At the end of the film, you'll find the details of all the lawyers involved and other members of our group should you require any further information. Thank you for watching.